an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, chapters 4, 5, and 6. In these chapters, Coriolanus gets to know Lucy Gray Baird a little bit better and plays for the cameras. Meanwhile, this other bitch is playing with fire and gets her throat cut. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you?
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
How did these 3 chapters hit? Have you been consistently surprised by the way things are unfolding?
First of all, I have to say, and we touched on this in the first 3 chapters on that podcast, I am really struggling with really being empathetic and caring about Snow. Mm-hmm. Because I'm so keenly aware of what he morphs into, what he becomes. So that's really troubling. And I'm not sure if that will be consistent throughout the book or if eventually I'll just get immersed enough in this version to, put the future a little bit out of my mind so it's not actively interfering with the story.
Yeah.
So I want to preface with that. And the reason I want to bring that up is because there are several moments in these chapters where normally I would have been like, aw, or that's brilliant, or like anything complimentary. And it kept getting tainted, right? But that said, these were 3 really interesting chapters. I love Lucy already. And
she's really
I don't
fascinating.
She's so interesting. And this idea of the people that she's from, the Covey or the Covey, which is not something,
Covey.
Right. That's what I figured as well too. Which is not something I think that it's mentioned at all in the original 3 books. So this is a new piece of information, and it's fascinating to think of a sort of nomadic people who weren't aligned with any of the districts, who apparently didn't even take sides in the war, felt like they were sort of outside of it. And then they just sort of get rounded up and placed in 12. I don't even know if all of them end up 12 or if they end up scattered across the districts. But that's like fascinating to me because it didn't even occur to me that there would be people outside of Panem that didn't like really consider themselves part of the war. So that was really really interesting. And then this burgeoning, like I think I went on record as being like, I'm not here if this is going to end up being like a love thing,
Yeah.
And I'm still really not here for it, but there's already like sparks that are sort of flying, at least on Snow's part, he's falling for her. It's
there's
so
a little
clear.
bit of a flirt happening, and he doesn't know how to like act about it, which I find very funny.
Right.
Just how he tends to be, I won't say he's sure of himself most of the time, but he's able to sort of like quickly judge what the most advantageous thing to do is. Yeah. And he with her, it's not happening so easy.
Yeah, he's like very, very adept at reading the room, figuring out the best angle of practically any situation. But she really like knocks him off kilter in a way that he's clearly not used to. I will say some of these flashes of the beginning of the Hunger Games as we grew to know them have also really been fascinating. But also I got so angry reading about it, because to find out that it started in like what amounts to like a high school honors class, just spitballing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? After the, you know, the seeing the horrors of what it becomes and seeing like all these seeds being planted and these ideas being, you know, built upon, that I know turn into real fundamental parts of the game. It is, I was so angry.
Yes. Yes, I fully agree. And there's something very real about that makes me feel like this is based in something. I haven't looked into it. And if anybody out there does have some actual information on this, that's not just me having a hunch, I would be very, very curious about it, because it just feels like, especially when we find out how the whole games got started, is the same sort of situation. And it was mentioned as like a theoretical, and that may be why we have a guy in charge who is addicted to morphling, because he has to live with the fact that he created this thing and didn't intend it to be what it eventually became. And it's happening in front of his eyes repeatedly. Like, I mean, yeah, it's grim. All right. So we start off chapter 4. I already had read you the intro, which is when we find out that not only are there people here, but Coriolanus is on camera. And he is like, it really has a moment of like, okay, I could run, but if I do that, that's what they're going to see forever. It's going to be, I love the fact that he even comes up with the titles of the articles.
Oh God, yeah.
Like later on, do you remember in the amazing? Oh my God, I'm trying to remember what it was that she says with dating Jamie Tarts.
Oh,
Tart breaks Tart's heart, something like that. Oh, I'm trying to remember how it went. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. Keely giving the headlines after she's photographed with Ted eating a hamburger.
Yeah.
She's like, you're really good at that.
Keely's got bars.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, what does she say? I'm adorable and I can rhyme my ass off or something like that. I think it's why people hate me or want to take me down, or it's why people want to destroy me.
But yeah, like, if those who don't know, we're talking about Ted Lasso, which is a great show. But yeah, there's a similar thing where she's coming up with the headlines that they would use. And it's just so fun, like, because his name is Snow and how much that can be. Snow's meltdown. Too hot for snow. Yeah. Oh, they totally would.
Those are exactly what the headlines would be. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah. Which actually shows us just how good he is at this.
Yes, exactly. So he
Oh, I'm sorry. Ahead. I was just going to say
please.
I had theorized that he would probably, because he's so charming, figure out a way out of this embarrassing situation. And that's exactly what he does. He has I don't want to call it confidence. It is a confidence, but we know like internally that he's mortified, right? And he's like panicking. But he has a sense of composure that is like, seemingly unflappable, with the exception of those with like the keenest eye. But most people were really like fooled by this performance, and he is shored up by Lucy kind of whispering, "Own it." And that's when that's when like the switch flips. But there I go again. I keep going to that. That never works out for me. But
what, the switch flip?
The switch flipped, which is the one I always say backwards.
Yeah, I really enjoy the own it, because it just feels like we saw the moment when she decided she was going to do this in her own situation. You know, getting knocked down and somebody in the audience begins to sing, and all of a sudden she's like, her spine is stiffened, and she gets up and she just fucking leans into it. And it hits a little harder knowing that she is capable of doing the thing she's advising, because sometimes people will just say some shit that's a great idea, but they couldn't even do it. So shut up.
That is for sure. So yeah, then they have this. Oh no, you go. I was just going to say.
No,
so they
please,
have this.
It's better for you.
This cute little moment where he is being very gentlemanly towards her, and picks her up by the hand, and they start to engage with the audience a little bit, and he introduces her to the crowd of people that are standing, mostly the children, and she is so smart, where they're both just like, it's the kids, that's who we need to appeal to in this moment. And she's a natural at this. He's also a natural, but she is as well. And she understands the game that needs to be played almost immediately, and goes into a performance that's pretty remarkable, considering her circumstances, that she's been dumped into a zoo and will be dropped to her imminent demise within days.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation, not just because of how everything is developing, but because, and when I say developing, I mean like the ideas for the games that we know eventually do become how things work, but also the sort of fatalist attitude that why bother trying to charm everybody after a certain point, because it's not going to make a difference. And how much like the whole goal behind the games, as Dr. Gall says later, the games don't exist without the audience, and you have to get them to watch, which means you have to get them to give their tacit approval, and you've got to make them complicit somehow. And so these chapters in particular are the ones where we really get to see the origins of, he says how dangerous hope is in a later speech in his life. And that's sort of what it is that they're banking on, is you have to give everybody this feeling of, maybe if I go the extra mile with my performance, that will do something. That will save me somehow.
I love that moment when they ask him what the games are for, and he rattles off, that it's punitive, that it's punishment. I was expecting him to go into the hope bit, because I know that from later on in life. And I was really pleased that hasn't occurred to him yet. He hasn't formulated that thought on his own just yet.
Yes.
Because not that it would be unbelievable if he had gotten to that point already at this age, but it just would have been a kind of like, really? He's already with the spiel already? So I really like that he's kind of caught off guard and ends up not really answering the question satisfactorily. And has to admit that I don't really know. And then that's when she goes into telling him what the deal is. But yeah, I really like that. It makes me
wonder how much Lucy Gray's handling of her life as a performer altered the direction the games went eventually, because a lot of these ideas
it's huge.
Are coming up because she's the one who just sort of made this huge impression on everybody.
Yeah.
So it feels like she as a person is like the nexus point for the whole thing being a performance.
Yeah. Without her,
you
have that, we have the rest of the kids we can compare her to that are in, the rest of the tributes. And even as late as after she has her little picnic with Snow, they are still, and Sejanus shows up with food. They don't want to take it. We have later on when they're doing the interviews and like no one is really talking to their mentors. she's changing everything, because otherwise what they're getting is just a wall. And maybe the kids could have come up with a couple of things, but she's changing history in a really unfortunate way right now. It's not her fault.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So he does the poised, why don't I introduce you to my friends here, meet a few of my neighbors. And they go around. She's really good with the kids and utterly ignores the adults, which is the tactic she just seems to employ, period, and does work quite well. And the kids seem to really like her. She's charming to them and really good with the way that she responds to them. And I do appreciate that every now and then she inserts a comment. Like at one point, there's a mention of like, oh, Coriolanus, did you decide to come here? And she's like, for the record, I didn't get a choice. And later on, they're eating, and he's like, I'm sure they feed the tributes. And she's like, for the record, it's been 3 days since I ate. Yeah. Like, she's not just going to let things slide and pretend it's great, but she is careful about when she inserts her complaints.
Right. I love when the reporter starts to, like, leave after she says that. He tries to, like, slink away.
Embarrassing. And yeah, so when Coriolanus is asked, did your teachers tell you to be here? He says, they didn't tell me not to. Did you have second thoughts about diving into a cage of tributes? A second, a third, and I imagine the fourth and fifth will be hitting me sometime soon, admitted Coriolanus. But if she's brave enough to be here, shouldn't I be? Oh, for the record, I didn't have a choice, said Lucy Gray. For the record, neither did I, said Coriolanus. After I heard you sing, I couldn't keep away. I just want to take a moment and admire that line of her saying, I didn't have a choice, and this piece of shit saying, neither did I, because I couldn't resist. Oh, shit.
You know, it's so funny. Like, for a split second, I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he just got assigned this, you know. This is the first year he got plucked. But then he followed it up with that bullshit. I'm like, see, this is why I hate you.
Yep. It's so like, it feels like something that would actually be like talked about on Twitter. This kind of comment, you know, it just felt very, very real. Just trying to smooth sail right on past the uncomfortable. You didn't have a choice, and just make it a sort of like charming. Oh, but you're so fascinating, and we're going to distract entirely from the horrors of what's going on. Ugh, I hate him.
Yep.
So
that's the whole thing too, right? To distract from the horrors that are going on. So yeah, we see why he ended up being quite so successful. He's very good at it already.
He really is. So eventually he is let out. One of the peacekeepers is like, the fuck are you doing in there? And he's like, yeah, I also had that question. They said I could get a ride and then they fucking dumped me. So where's your dude who's supposed to be in charge? Because I could talk to him about it. I'd be happy to. And he feels like he like managed to do pretty well overall with how he managed this whole thing and the way he comes across when he watches the recording a little bit later.
Yeah, he's feeling pretty good about himself. And then he gets to school and, you know, he's again still feeling pretty good. People are giving him a little, you know, attaboy. And then he sees the fucking list of the mentors up, which this wasn't news. Like, this was we already knew this. He already knew this.
Yes.
But somehow seeing the assignment pinned to the wall and him at the bottom, and he says, like, who am I to be like, he says, it couldn't be a more stinging public reminder of his precarious position than to be dangling there at the end like an afterthought.
He really takes himself so seriously.
I got quite the giggle, I have to admit. But yeah, then they end up in class with this Right?
This is when you meet Dr. Gall.
Yep.
And she greets him with hippity hoppity.
Yeah.
Can I get your impressions on Dr. Gall? Because I don't know what to make of this crazy bitch.
She's giving nuts. She's giving wire ass. I don't know yet. Like it's so funny. She's presented in this kind of very non-threatening way with the hippity hoppity and the rhyming, you know. But meanwhile, she is antagonizing this mutt that she's created that was once a rabbit.
Yeah.
And those two images together are just very, very wrong. Like I'm picturing like Betty White then doing something like that. And it's just very incongruous. Like
Betty White, that's so funny.
But like, yeah, this sort of disarming way she has about her, but she is clearly dangerous and possibly a psychopath. I'm not accredited to be making those types of diagnoses, but she's a fictional character, so I'm going to take some leeway.
That's what they're there for us to decide what to think of them.
And he has this remembrance of her when he was much younger, like elementary school aged, where he had seen her and he was 9 and they're at her lab or whatever, and he watched as she melted the flesh off of a lab rat. And then asked the class of 9-year-olds if any of them had any pets they were tired of, which is just wildly inappropriate.
I can't imagine, like, as a child, that would haunt me the rest of my life. I was so sensitive anyway, and to do something like that to an animal in front of a bunch of children, like, I would never have recovered from that. That'd be it. It would be it.
There's
two
really
who plays her in
funny.
The movie?
I have no idea.
Viola Davis.
Shut your mouth.
Yep.
Seriously?
Oh,
that bums me out.
Why does it bum you out? I wasn't expecting that response. I thought you'd be like, that'll be interesting. She's such a good actor.
I was picturing something very Betty White like somebody very like sweet that doesn't like can't really we don't think of them doing menacing, you know, or even like deeply dramatic. We think of them as just being like pure and sort of innocent and incapable of cruelty, and then have that contrasted with the things that she's doing, right? Like she doesn't have to be looking all dangerous. She can be very smiley and happy while she's poking this fucking lockjaw whatever rabbit thing that she's created. But I'm sure Viola Davis kills it because she's fucking Viola Davis and she wrecks everything that she does. So I'm sure it's phenomenal. You saw the movie?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
But I was going to say that it's interesting that your response makes sense once you explain what it was that you were sort of hoping for. But I didn't get the same sense of Dr. Gall that you're getting, where she comes across as non-threatening and then surprises you with how ruthless she is. I saw her as extremely threatening and utilizing weird non-threatening language purposely to be unnerving beyond what she already gives, because she is like the Joker or something. I'm going to do a creepy nursery rhyme because I just love to be creepy.
No.
That was how I took it. So I kind of prefer your version of it.
Yeah, no, this is like somebody's harmless grandma who like secretly poisons people that she doesn't like that fucking Arsenic and Lace movie.
There was a really good Snapped episode like that. This woman, she had poisoned everybody, you guys. She poisoned the cops. She literally poisoned the cops who came to investigate poisonings. The gall to do I can't.
I love that for her. Like Poison's getting a real bad rap.
She poisoned the people working at the hospital to care for her poisoned husband.
Oh my God. I love the dedication.
She just fucking went for it, man. Yeah.
She was poisoning for the pleasure of it.
Sheer joy of poisoning.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How freeing that must be. Like, you don't have a care in the fucking world when you're just poisoning everybody that annoys you or that's in your way or that's an inconvenience.
For 30 years, the way that she had, you have got to just have the who gonna check me boo energy about it.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know?
I bet she smiled everywhere she fucking went to. I bet she was nice to customer service people. This bitch didn't have a care in the world. She was unburdened. Free.
Oh my God. Anyway. We fell in a cage and we landed on stage. Ha! Exactly. That's what you did. Dr. Gull gave him an approving look. You're good at games. Maybe one day you'll be a game maker. And he's just like, that is beneath me.
Right. I love that.
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. He's like, no disrespect, but it didn't seem like much of a job. It required no particular skills. And he's right.
Yeah, the game as it stands, apparently they don't plan too much. So.
Yeah, they just toss him in there, throw a couple weapons, and go have at it. And then people are just supposed to watch a slaughter with no entertainment value. I guess maybe, and I think it's touched on, maybe at the beginning of the game, sort of at the end of the war, where there was a lot of like public executions. But that was that's an entirely different thing. That's like, you vanquished your enemy and you're all like patriotic and full of nationalism. And, these people have been harming you and killing your loved ones, so this is a different thing to get the nation to engage with that. But this is just throwing a bunch of malnourished, surly teenagers into a pit and being like, entertain us.
Yep. Yeah, this is so this is when the conversation happens about like, why do we do it? And they don't actually give him the answer. She just says, you'll eventually get there. And I believe the hope thing is meant to be the conclusion she's looking for, that he eventually comes to.
And then he gets a fucking demerit.
Oh my God. So Dean Highbottom, who, by the way, in the movie is played by Peter Dinklage.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
His name is Highbottom.
Highbottom. Oh my God. I didn't think of that. Is that a purposeful joke? God, I don't know if that's good.
It is now. Oh, how did we not talk about that in the first episode? Like
the name Highbottom?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, now that you mention that name, I wanted to point out a couple things in the list of tributes.
Oh yeah. Let's go back. Some of these names are wild.
Yeah. Livia Cardew, Palmyra Monty, Sejanus Plinth, Floros Friend, Eo Jasper, Urban Canville. Urban. The name Urban. That just feels racist. Persephone Price. Festus Creed. Festus is too close to Fester. Dennis
All I can think is
Fling.
Festivus.
Iphigenia Moss. And I just have to mention, I want Iphigenia to come back in style. That feels like the sort of...
That is a wonderful name. I'm so glad you said something. That is an amazing name.
I am super into it.
Yeah, same. Check out these from District 6. I wonder if is that a brother and sister?
No, these names are the names of the mentors.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I think those are the twins that he later comes across.
Okay.
Vipsania sickle. Vipsania. Are you serious? Pliny Harrington, Juno Phipps, and Hilarious Heavensby. Hilarious Heavensby?
I laughed so hard at that. I mean, come on now. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Gaius Breen, Androcles Anderson, Domitia Whimsywick, Arachne Crane, Clemencia Dovecote, Felix Ravenstill, Lysistrata Vickers, and Coriolanus Snow. That must have been so much fun to figure out these names. These are so bonkers. It really reminds me of like a name that I had came across recently that I was like, oh man, if that would come back, Hepzibah.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, just like there's just you think of a very specific point in time with the name Hepzibah. You know, I'm seeing a black and white photo of somebody in like a severe outfit who probably, you know, was neighbors to what's her name that chopped her parents to death.
Lizzie Borden?
That's the one. Yeah. Anyway. High Bottom. High Bottom does not like Coriolanus at all. And every time he gets a chance to poke and prod at him, he's going to take it. And it's kind of funny because like we're clearly in a way meant to see him as an antagonist, but I can't help but just kind of fist pump because he doesn't let Coriolanus get away with shit.
He really doesn't. He when I said earlier, people who can see through him, this is who I have in mind, because this is the second time now we've had him call Snow on his shit right to his face. And he is like, yeah, I caught your whole performance. And it looked to me like you were thinking about running.
Mm-hmm.
And Snow has to be all like, well, it took a minute to get my bearings. But yeah, he peeped it. And I don't know what the beef is. I don't know if there's, you know, if it's going to be revealed or if it's just going to be a matter of High Bottom seeing Coriolanus for what he is and just not caring for it. And also, because Snow is so popular and well liked and he does well in school and he comes from a prestigious family, even though he's broke now, the arrogance of him is not doing him any favors at High Bottom's estimation. And I don't I'm curious if we find out if there's like a deeper thing going on, maybe like something with Snow's family or, you know, who knows what. Or if it is really just, I don't like this fucking kid. I don't like him. That's all there is to it. I don't like him. And I'm secretly hoping for the latter. I'm hoping that there is no like deeper thing. He's just been peeping this kid for a while and sees through his bullshit. That's what I sort of
wonder, based on the fact that like we find out that High Bottom was responsible for the concept of the games, does he see like himself, his younger self, when he looks at Coriolanus, like somebody who is a social climber, who is incredibly ambitious and trying to impress all the time, and remembers like, I was like that and look what I fucking made, you know?
Very, very possible. And it would definitely lean into your idea of that, you know, the morphling addiction is not an accident, that this is somebody who was deeply troubled by what they brought into the world. Mm-hmm. And if he is seeing that repeating in front of him, you know, then it's showing him all the things about himself that he doesn't like. And, you know, we always react to that with other people, usually negatively, especially when people show us the sides of ourselves that we don't particularly care to see, you know, that whole thing. So, yeah, you might be onto something there. What a strange thing to say.
You know, that bugaboo. Isn't bugaboo like a hang up?
Maybe. I'm not familiar with it in that context.
Uh-oh. What is it? What does it otherwise mean?
I mean, the only other thing I can think about is a song. There was a song,
Okay.
maybe
You're
Destiny.
bugging me, you bugaboo. I remember that lyric from
That
somewhere.
is that Destiny's Child? Pay
Yeah,
My
I was about to
Bills.
say.
I think that's the Pay My Bills song.
Oh my god. Now you got me second guessing myself so bad. Hold on. I gotta look up Bugaboo now. You got me fucking
Careful.
paranoid.
Who knows what side of the
some real
Who knows what side of the internet? Inside of the internet, you're going to end up on.
Oh my god, here it is. Okay. Noun, an imaginary object of fear. Also, something that causes fear or distress out of proportion to its importance. Also called like a boogeyman kind of thing. Dread, hobgoblin, ogre. In 1598 is its first known use. Okay. Well, all right. I feel like I used it in the right way, but my understanding of what it meant was kind of wrong. So if we hadn't drawn attention to it, I might have got away with it. But
isn't that sort of like what we do, though?
But yeah, so like the question about what happens with the games, and he says it's about the children because they matter. And Highbottom says, how do they matter? And he says, people love children. And then he realizes, like, actually, that's not true. People treat children like shit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
he has a memory of a time when he was treated particularly poorly.
Yes.
Several times. Having food stolen from him. Cop smack him in the jaw, collapsing on the street, nearly dying from some type of flu, and people just walking over him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That doesn't sound like a great time.
No, it does not.
Oh my god. We never, by the way, last episode talked about his memory of watching a man cut a corpse up to take.
Oh my god, the leg.
Yeah, once we finished recording, I was like, oh, we didn't even mention it. I was so mad at myself for forgetting, but we had a lot to talk. It was still like over 2 hours, that episode. So.
Yeah. And it's funny too that you mentioned it because I went looking for that. And then I got distracted because we started talking about something else, and forgot about it as quickly as I remembered it. Secretly, I probably didn't want to talk about it because he watched a neighbor, like somebody froze to death or something. And he saw a neighbor come out and saw a leg off and then drag it back into the house for dinner. And it's unpleasant. Yeah. It's so funny too. Like,
this, I found it. You found it? Read it or just, yeah.
Well, yeah, you can go ahead and read it.
On the way, they passed 3 bodies, recognizing one as that of a young maid who served tea so nicely at the Cranes' afternoon gatherings. A heavy, wet snow began falling, and they thought the streets deserted. But on the way home, a bundled figure sent them scurrying behind a hedge. They watched as their neighbor, Nero Price, a titan in the railroad industry, carved the leg from the maid, sawing back and forth with a terrifying knife until the limb came free. He wrapped it in the skirt he ripped from her waist and then bolted down the side street that led to the back of his townhouse. The cousins never spoke of it, even to each other, but it was burned into Coriolanus' memory. The savagery distorting Price's face, the white anklet and scuffed black shoe at the end of the severed limb, and the absolute horror of realizing that he, too, could now be viewed as edible.
Ugh. See, there's this thing, and it comes up later, where they're talking about the savagery of the districts and how they're less than human. They're barely human as it is. And thinking about the things that Snow saw happen in the Capitol, the things he saw people do to each other, the things that were done to him, and yet still end up believing that somehow the Capitol people were more evolved, than those in the districts. It is, I wonder if, like, again, in the first episode, I talked about things I didn't want to see, like them falling in love and then him like being disillusioned with the Capitol and then somehow finding his way back into that life. But I'm really curious because now that we've gotten these glimpses into some of the things that he's going through, we knew from the first 3 chapters about the sort of poverty and the lack of food and the selling of the things that they owned. But this is external shit. This is like how people are treating each other. And you just would hope, and I guess it's true in real life. We know lots of figures you can point to, but you would hope, right, that kind of experience would lend someone to becoming empathetic and compassionate. And there's often times I think we take it for granted that that's what happens. Like we just assume, that people will coming from that circumstance would carry that empathy and understanding into their lives, no matter how high up they ascended. But we know that really is not how it works. We've seen time and time again, people who come from what we would say humble beginnings, or adversity. And they just become different people, like little monsters. And it's really, a little demoralizing to be reminded that I like to think that people going through this sort of thing grow up to be better people. And oftentimes they simply do not. And that is a unpleasant thing to be reminded of, It's like a little bit of a fantasy that you want to believe in.
I think that we just have this, especially it's been shown that people who read tend to have more empathy because they have put themselves in the positions of the characters that they're reading from. And so there's a sense of that familiarity of being able to imagine somebody else's point of view. But a lot of people are just so profoundly self-centered that something bad happens to them and they really seem to believe they're the only one a bad thing has ever happened to. It's like, rather than it opening their mind to what everyone might be suffering, that everybody potentially can relate to the situation, it instead becomes, but why me? In a way that's like so self-pitying and victim-y. It's giving incel in a way, just that kind of feeling of
right. Well, it's
nobody wants me, and that's like an aggression against me personally.
That's
instead
the
of it
thing
being like,
too.
Have you considered what you're like?
It's there's always like I am all for wallowing, and sometimes getting into spaces of self-pity and even the question of why me. But then there's a thing that can happen where you take all of that, and because you don't want to feel it anymore yourself, you then flip it and project it outwards, and you then make all of your shit everybody else's like fault,
Yes.
or their problem. And you then begin to abuse people because of the hurt that you have been through. And I guess that's kind of what happens in the long run to Snow, is that whatever he goes through in this book, and I'll get to it eventually, but like at the end of the day, those things that happened to him and the losses that he felt, he then, instead of sitting with those feelings and maybe journaling about them, he then decides to like enact on everyone else, Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that he we see later with Sejanus, the way that he like assigns motivation to Sejanus, that is wild. Like the assumptions that he is jumping to, it's like, dude, you are your perception is so warped.
Yeah.
The fact that you're looking at this guy and you think that he's thinking any of the things you're putting on him is bonkers. Like you have no for somebody who is often very good at understanding the psychology of other people to manipulate them, he really doesn't get Sejanus at all.
I think
know that's
Sejanus,
point because Sejanus is like,
yeah, he might as well have two heads. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he is completely alien to Snow. Snow cannot. It's so funny too because he swings back and forth from really thinking he knows who this kid is and knows what his deal is to then theorizing, and you're just like, oh my God, you're so way off base. But you're so sure that you are nailing it. Like, he feels like he's nailed this kid. He knows exactly who this kid is. And it's, again, projection. He's putting all of the things that he would think and feel and do if he were in Sejanus's position, which is a position of like power and financial privilege and all the things that Snow thinks are due him.
Yeah.
Right. And to a point where he actually thinks to himself about Sejanus, how this kid has come in and stolen from Snow. You know, he took the things that are supposed to be mine. Meanwhile, this kid does not want to be here. He does not feel good about his station. He has real class guilt, does not value the capital in the way that his father clearly does. He does not, to Snow's chagrin, does not appreciate how good he has it, you know, and shouldn't even be here because he's district. Like, his whole presence in Snow's orbit is like offensive to him. But because Snow took the high road when they were younger and didn't actively engage in the bullying, this kid thinks that this is his friend.
Yeah.
And it makes me so sad.
It's so sad. So when he comes upon this, Sejanus has brought food. He is hyper aware of the fact that they may not have eaten. Coriolanus is like, oh, really? You brought food? Because you saw what I did and you're trying to show me up? Yeah, all right. No, dude. It's empathy. But no, it hasn't occurred to Coriolanus that they may not have eaten. As it also didn't occur to the newsman. Nobody is asking these questions. They just trust it's taken care of, I guess. And Sejanus is also trying to specifically get the person he's assigned to acknowledge him, and that person knows him from school and is not interested.
This is so, like, we knew it was fucked up that he got, like, somebody from his district, that his father did that to him. But then it turns out to really be somebody he knows. And somebody he feels indebted to. Even though, like, this little story he tells about how when they were in school and he smashes his finger and his kid brings him snow to keep the swelling down. Like, Sejanus is still remembering that and feels like I owe this kid and that's who my tribute is. It's so wrong. Like, I want to fight his dad. I low-key want to fight his dad.
100%. Yeah, so eventually, Coriolanus takes a sandwich from him, pretending like, I'm not threatened by you. Instead, what he's thinking is, it won't look bad for me to participate, despite having just got a demerit, if Sejanus is here too. And as long as I have him as a shield, then I can keep following my plan, and it should be okay. And he sits down with Lucy Gray and has a sandwich with her, which he almost doesn't want to eat because he feels like it's not going to look good. And later on, his grandmother is like, you can eat with her. That
I know that was
crossing the line.
That was why it never even occurred to me that sitting down and sharing a meal. But of course you don't. Of course you don't. I guess I got too, like, the idea of like all the times Katniss and Peeta were able to sit and eat with Effie and everybody else, like it just didn't occur to me that sharing a meal in this fashion would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. God, I love this. When Lepidus, who's the guy who's from the news, another student just passed out sandwiches. Is he a mentor? Coriolanus didn't like sharing the spotlight, but Sejanus' presence could protect him. And I just love how everything that he like considers, it's always just about the angle, every time. So this is when Lucy Gray says that she hasn't eaten in a bit and eventually follows the camera guy and suggests that people come down and bring food with them. And I'll be honest, I, at the time of reading this, assumed that the next time he came down, it would just be flooded with people trying to feed them.
Yeah.
Nah, people are not that into it, which I have to assume it might be because fewer people are doing well than Snow may be assuming.
Right. Yeah, there's I think it's later on when the rest of towards the end when things start to go really wrong and everybody has brought food and one girl is like slicing up cheese and grapes. He's like, what are those, grapes?
The fuck did you even find those? So she asks him eventually, like, what do you get out of this, being a mentor? And he's like, I'm not really sure, because they've never done this before. And he had suggested she sing, and he feels like it looks bad now to be suggesting she do performance to benefit him, like it's gonna... Yeah. And he blurts out that he doesn't have much extra food at home to share. And at first is like, I can't believe I fucking said that. But he notices that she responds to this admission and decides, all right, you know what? I'm just going to lean into it. And he says, that, you know, one time I ate half a jar of paste just to stop the pains in my stomach. Yeah? How was it? She asked. That threw him, and he surprised himself by actually laughing. Really sticky. So yeah, just a moment of them sort of managing to commiserate, but it's by accident. Like, yeah, he doesn't possess the understanding of empathy enough to be like, I understand hunger also. He blurts a thing out that he wishes he could take back and then has to like make it work for him because he keeps everything so close to the chest, you know?
There's a moment where he apologizes to her, you know, about not having as much food as he'd like to bring her. And he says, you shouldn't have to perform for it. And she replies back that this is not the first time I've had to sing for my food. And I do love to sing. And I like that moment a lot because he's assuming, because he's always assuming that he is the one in charge of the situation. That he's the one in control. And he's apologizing for trying to make her do something when I don't think like he could make her do anything that she didn't want to do, you know?
Agreed.
But so yeah, it was weird because he's apologizing and I want to be like, good. I'm glad that you recognize that, you know, she shouldn't have to perform for her food. Like that's a good moment. But then I'm just like, but why does he think he could, like, she would only do it if she wanted to do it. I don't know.
And it's not even like she shouldn't have to perform for her food. It's like, I know she'll like it if I say she shouldn't have to perform for her food.
So you think this is calculated?
I feel like it's wholly calculated. The only time in Coriolanus's like POV that we ever have a moment of him seeming to be like, that would be a fucked up thing. I hope that doesn't happen because it would upset me, is thinking about a pet cat that somebody had. And if Dr. Gall got a hold of that cat and brought it to the lab.
Right.
And that's the only time. When it comes to people, he never seems to have like his heart go out to anybody or a sense of real conscience. It's always like, how should I respond based on what this person would like to see? So I don't know if he really believes she shouldn't have to sing for her supper. I know that he thinks she wants him to say that, so he says it.
I agree. I agree with the not being able to put himself in like someone else's shoes, because right after this moment, they have this sort of like, not a tense moment, but like a sort of a poignant moment where she makes a reference to leaving something at home. And he thinks to himself, one, how, she'd never be able to go back home, and how he couldn't stand the thought of being torn from his own home. But it doesn't connect to being like, and I felt so terrible at the thought that she would never go home,
Yes.
Or it broke my heart to think that she would never see her family again, or anything like that. It's just sort of I would hate if that were me. Yep. And then that's it.
Yep. Yeah, it's very much like, I would hate that were me. But of course, it won't be me because I'm a different type of person. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen to me. So when I think about it, it's a pure hypothetical that I feel entirely safe from, really, and can stay over there because I don't ever have to consider this as a threat at all.
Yeah. Well, I do want to mention he's got that threat of taxes having to be paid on the apartment that's got to be looming in the back of his head. I was kind of hoping that would occur to him in this moment to kind of like make it come home, to like make it connect, to be like that fuck, that could be me. But it does not happen.
No. And he even, like, Sejanus at one point tells him, I've been imagining that I'm one of the tributes. And he literally has to stop himself laughing in Sejanus' face. It's like he starts to, and then he realizes Sejanus is serious and manages to like cut his reaction off just in time, because he doesn't understand, why would you do that? And he calls it like a weird pastime, as if this is like, oh, I've decided to write some fanfic about it, rather than I have just barely been raised up out of this circumstance and consider it very close to possible. He just can't at all put himself in a situation where it feels like this is something he would ever need to worry about.
Yep. He doesn't say anything really to any of this. Like Sejanus, pours his heart out about how vividly he imagines this scenario where he, they read his name and he goes to the stage and they handcuff him and now they're hitting him for no reason, and on and on and on. And the only thing that happens next is they wheel the hay into the cage, and they get distracted by the sound of that. Snow tells him it's not going to happen to you, and Sejanus is back. It could have, though. That could have been me. And again, no acknowledgement of that from Snow. No acknowledgement that's even said, no attempt to connect around it or anything. Just, the conversation just moves on.
Sejanus says, oh, he remembers me. The Plinths are notorious back home. Notorious and deeply despised. And now you're his mentor, said Coriolanus. And now I'm his mentor, Sejanus echoed. And I felt Coriolanus saying, and now you're his mentor, is like, you won.
Yeah.
Yeah. They despise you, and now look at you. Good for you. And Sejanus is like, no, this is fucked up. And it's just so interesting because they are having entirely different conversations, and they each think they're having a different one. Like, so Janus really thinks Coriolanus is like a decent dude who kind of gets it, at least more than his, like, you know, classmates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're just so wrong about each other. And it's fascinating. When he tells them, it's really weird.
When Sejanus is like, he wouldn't even take a sandwich from me. He'd rather go into the game starving. And Snow is like, that's not your fault. And like, if it were anyone else saying that, I'd be like, oh, he's trying to, like, you know, comfort him.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, I don't think that he's capable of comforting someone so different from himself that he just doesn't understand. And Sejanus says, yeah, I know. I'm so blameless. I'm choking on it. Like,
which is a great line.
It really is very good.
But yeah, Coriolanus is like, I didn't own slaves.
Yeah.
Why they think I have privilege? I grew up poor and didn't have food.
Nope, I had to work
so
for everything.
Why are they? Yeah,
I had to work twice as hard as everybody else to maintain appearances and do well in school while I was living on cabbage and beans, and apparently handkerchiefs, which they have an endless supply of.
That is such a fun little detail. Like, such a weird thing. He keeps giving them to Lucy because he's just like, no, I got plenty of them. So then comes the point where Coriolanus, who's feeling like he's simultaneously getting impatient with Sejanus because he's whining and crying about this when he has been given the best, like, tribute out of all of them that is guaranteed almost to win. Mm-hmm. And also just trying to, like, steer the conversation in a different direction. And he says any of us would have been happy to get him. And Sejanus is like, oh, yeah, take him. I'll take
yours.
Lucy. No, let's do that. And Coriolanus is just about to be like, oh, okay. And then he thinks to win with Marcus was no win at all. It took no brains or skill or even particular luck. To win with Lucy Gray would be an incredible long shot, but historic if he pulled it off. Besides, was winning even the point? Or was it to engage the audience? Thanks to him, Lucy Gray was the current star of the games, the most memorable tribute no matter who won. He thought of their hands locked together in the zoo as they took on the world. They were a team. She trusted him. He couldn't imagine telling her he dumped her for Marcus, or even worse, telling the audience. In addition, what guarantee did he have that Marcus would respond to him any more than he did to Sejanus? He seemed like just the kind to stonewall the lot of them. And then Coriolanus would look like a fool, begging for a crumb of attention from Marcus while Lucy Gray did pirouettes around Sejanus. There was one more consideration. He had something Sejanus Plinth wanted, and wanted badly. Sejanus had already usurped his position, his inheritance, his clothes, his candy, his sandwiches, and the privilege due a Snow. Now, he was coming for his apartment, his spot at the university, his very future, and had the gall to be resentful of his good fortune, to reject it, to consider it a punishment even. If having Marcus as a tribute made Sejanus squirm, then good. Let him squirm. Lucy Gray was the one thing belonging to Coriolanus that he would never, ever get. So that is a hell of a motivation for hanging on to her. Spite. Yeah. Pure spite. Yeah.
Apparently that's all it takes. It's all it takes. Someone who's been living on it for quite some time, I can tell you, it works. It just like, again, to have the wherewithal to think all of this through in the seconds that this would have taken, to go from what appears to be like the obvious carrot dangling like right in front of your face, like this superior physical specimen of Marcus, who had a much better chance of winning the games, to snatch that and then saying, no, wait. And then the fact that he goes from understanding how special Lucy Gray is to spiraling into this spiteful, hate-filled diatribe, even though it's internal, against Janus, and then making the decision to keep Lucy based on spite, and the potential glory he might get from being her mentor, whether she lives or dies. Like, it doesn't matter if she wins. Like, it's not even like you would want him to be a little bit more like horrified at the thought that she would die, but he's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter if she wins or not. It's the image, and then the fact
I can make it work.
I can make it work either way. And then one of the most telling things being that he can't imagine telling her that he dumped her, but it would be even worse to tell the audience that he dumped her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's saying a lot.
I think that this is part of what made this book a difficult read for me, was the fact that, like, and I'm appreciating it a lot more on the second read through. I was having such a slippery time understanding writing from Snow's perspective at all. And the way that she wrote him was sort of, I had expected something a little bit more favorable, and it was not hitting as quite favorable. And I thought it was just, she's trying to do the favorable thing, and it's just not connecting for me. And I'm realizing now, like, how careful she is when she's writing his motivations for things, to write around the motivation that I'm looking for as a person who cares. And that's why reading it felt so strange to me the first time, is because I keep waiting for him to be driven by the same impulses that I am, and it never happens almost ever. So I'm just sort of like constantly feeling like unsatisfied, like something, you know, I was given this like tasty potato chip, but there's no salt on it. And I'm just like, what is this? What's the point? You know? Anyway.
Saltless potato chip. That is,
you know what I'm saying?
Blasphemous.
Yeah. Agreed. So eventually, the way that he manages to like play this when he's talking to Sejanus is just, do you think that you're going to be allowed to dump the best victor or the best tribute that your father like personally paid for? Do you think that's going to be allowed to happen? Come on. Like, and also, it's going to look real bad for me. I just got a demerit. I can't be part of this. And of course, Janus then begins to like fall all over himself, apologizing for not considering how it would have.
Well, fucking Snow is like, I can't dump her. She's already attached to me. It'd be like kicking a kitten. I don't think I'd have the heart. Like, none of this is your actual motivation, sir. None of this.
Not
Boy, he really does know how to say what the other person in the room wants to hear. And that is, I think we talked about this a little bit on the first 3 chapter podcast, but that is such a fucking skill to have. And you can't even really teach it. Like, you just have it or you fucking don't have it. Like, knowing exactly what to say to make whoever you're talking to think that you are on their side, that you understand their point of view, that you would do anything in your power to help them when it's 100% not true. My God.
Mirroring. I guess, right? Like, this is what
yeah,
con artists do.
Like high level mirroring, like mirroring with like a ability to read people, so that you're not just showing them back what they're doing, but you're showing them back what they want to see. You know?
Yeah. And high level, because like a con artist, I like to think, turns that on for their cons and isn't necessarily just living like that.
Have you ever been conned like real hard?
That, but, you know, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is our fucking solar panels. So I can't, if I never found out about it. So I don't know if it even counts then, you know?
Yeah, I got conned real hard one time at work. And like, I realized it happened right after it was over. And it took me like a lot of like to undo it. But yeah, I got conned real bad at my job when I was working for a hotel. It was so fucking transparent, but like he was like a flatterer, and is like a middle-aged guy. He's checking into the hotel, and he didn't have his wallet, right? But he had like a reservation, and he had like he was a member of like the rewards program. You know, and he had like a crazy number of points. The room was booked on point, so he didn't have to pay for the room. But you're supposed to get like a credit card for incidentals. And he gave me like this sob story, and he was like a platinum member, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I'll give you like a credit card number. I just got to get up to my room and like make some phone calls, blah, blah, blah. So basically, long story short, I let him check in without a card for incidentals. The room was covered.
Uh-oh. This
motherfucker was getting like room service and shit delivered.
Yeah.
And so I kept locking him out of his room. But and then I would like leave a big note for the next shift, like, yo, don't let him back in the room until he gives a credit card. But then he would just con the next person on the shift.
Charm him. Yes.
So then I would come back to work the next day, and this motherfucker would stop. Like, how did he get back in his room? So then, like, I would see him leave, and I'd call him to the desk and be like, you have to, like, you know, what are you doing about your incidentals? And like, he gave me a card number. This is like years ago, guys, when you would like get an imprint of the credit card. So he gave me a card number to run, but like not have the card itself. And then he would go out. As soon as he would leave the property, I would lock his door. And then he would come back like on the next shift. And I'd come back to work the next day, and this motherfucker was still there.
Amazing. Man. The shamelessness you have to be a con artist. I just could never, you know?
Yeah, I had to threaten to call the police to get him to leave.
Gotta do what you gotta do, madam.
But yeah, I felt like just like it was like the worst one that ever happened to me. I never fell for anything like that before in my life, and haven't since. But he fucking got me. He got me good. He really did.
And it's interesting, like, bringing that up, like the con angle. We're talking about it in terms of Coriolanus being this type, but later on, when he's talking to his grandmother, she is implying he is being played by Lucy Gray. And he says, Tigra says, she's just a girl, grandma'am. She's district. And trust me, that one hasn't been a girl in a long time.
Yeah, there's some harsh words.
Lucy Gray is different. She took my side in the truck when the others wanted to attack me, and she had my back in the monkey house, too. The grandma'am held her ground. Would she have bothered if you weren't her mentor? Of course not. She's a wily little thing who began to manipulate you the moment you met. Tread carefully, my boy. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
I tell you what, I was like all indignant at this outburst. And then we get to the end of the fucking last chapter, and I was like, well.
Yeah. Things take a turn. And like not even just about the actual physical danger, but you step back and look at the situation, and it is sort of like, why am I assuming that Lucy Gray isn't manipulating him?
Mm-hmm,
She's clearly a born performer. It's just a lot more direct. She very well could be doing exactly what his grandmother's describing here. And why would I be like hard on her about that?
I think she's playing him a little bit. I think, like you said, like she's a natural performer, and I think that she, like Snow, is very good at reading people. When we find out a little bit about her history and like how she grew up, and having to take care of herself from, and siblings, and being raised by somebody who like didn't particularly care about raising them, and she's smart, and I think she's playing him, and I don't blame her, because her like life is low key in his hands, and she needs all the help she can get. I think that she peeps that he is somebody of, I mean, like all the kids at the academy are like somebody of status, but I think she peeps how he stands out amongst his peers. Yeah, I think she's definitely playing a game. Yeah, and I don't feel bad about it.
Well, that's exactly it. I was just sort of like, my instinct was to just be like, I can't believe she's like saying this. And then I was like, why am I acting as if this implication is somehow like an attack on Lucy's character? Of course she's trying to stay alive, and I'm not going to fault her for that in any sense. So, I had to just sort of reevaluate a couple times the way I was reacting to this accusation.
Yeah.
And then started to be like, you know what? I low-key hope she is, because he is so full of shit. It would be kind of nice to feel like he's getting played right back. It would feel satisfying. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I want to mention too that there's a moment where Tigress seems like a little like not like really keen on the games. It's like a really quick moment, and she apologizes for it. And then he says something to her, kind of like, I have to do this, right? Like I have to do it if I want like the prize. And he leaves out how excited he is to be doing this.
Yeah.
How like kind of fun the whole thing is becoming for him. He makes it seem very much like this is just an unsavory thing I have to do in order to lift the family up and out, which is what like my purpose is. Like I'm doing this for all of us,
Right. Right.
Which was just kind of gross.
So the next day, and I think that's when the conversation actually happens, she's made like a bread pudding out of a bunch of stale bread that she was told to throw out. And she was just like, or I could definitely do something with this. This is me taking home all of the fried chicken at the end of one of my shifts at Brookshire's when I worked there. And he mentions about how Sejanus wanted to switch with him, and this is Satyria that he's talking to, my bad. He tells her about how he wanted to switch. Satyria's mouth dropped open. No. Imagine what Strabo Plinth would say if that went public. Imagine what he owes me if it doesn't. Oh my God. Really? Is this good enough to blackmail somebody over? I mean, I do not understand these people.
I don't think so. I feel like the dad would just smack his kid around and that would be it.
Certainly possible.
And the teacher says, spoken like a Snow. Which says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, this is when we get the class brainstorming how to get people to watch the games. Sejanus' hand went up directly. Sejanus? Before we talk about making people watch, shouldn't we begin with the question of whether or not watching is the right thing to do? He said.
Nope.
Let's stay on topic, please.
Like, the teacher literally could have just been like, nope.
Nope. We do not need to start with that. Whole other question, utterly irrelevant. This is what we're doing. This is when we get somebody saying to just make it mandatory, which we know is how it works later. I don't know if these punishments are what exists later, though. What do you think?
I suspect that they were necessary for a short time. And that by the time we get to like the first books, people just know what the deal is at this point, and nobody fights it anymore. That's how I imagine.
That makes sense. Because his suggestion is like, we execute you in the districts, and in the capital, we make you move to the districts.
Yeah.
And if you mess up again the next year, then we execute you. And everybody laughs.
But then they start to give it serious thought. Mm-hmm. Now, the part about the capital, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I guess
that you get made move to a district.
Yeah. That feels, I want to say unlikely, but then I remind myself of the time period that we're in, this sort of era, this age of Reconstruction, and resources are still scant. And maybe like dumping people out of the capital isn't as extreme as it seems when they don't have enough to go around as it is. But I feel like I don't know. I was like on board with the idea of like they probably did punish people for not watching in the districts, but for some reason I'm hesitant to think that this is what they did in the capital, but I don't have like a good alternative in mind.
Yeah, I'm very curious about it because, it's mentioned, like I said in the originals, that it's a mandatory thing, but I don't recall any particular penalty being mentioned. So if I'm wrong about that, or if that's expanded on somewhere, please tell me, everybody, because I do want to know.
And someone does mention that maybe you could just send peacekeepers door to door, or do a random sampling, where, people had to be ready to answer questions. And maybe that's what happened in the Capitol. The students agree execution or banishment is too extreme. So maybe they would like take some privilege from them, or maybe whip them or something like that. But then this Clemencia girl says the real problem is it's sickening to watch, so people avoid it. Which, that never changed. It remained sickening to watch, I thought.
Yeah.
So they just did such a good job with everything else that they didn't really have to address this part of it.
Yeah, evidently. And poor Sejanus, when she says this, is very much like, oh, good, somebody who agrees with me. Oh, babe. Of course they do. Who wants to watch a group of children kill each other? Only a vicious, twisted person. Human beings may not be perfect, but we're better than that. How do you know? Livia said snippishly. And how does someone from the districts have any idea what we want to watch in the capital? You weren't even here during the war. Sejanus fell silent, unable to deny it. Because most of us are basically decent people, said Lysistrata Vickers, folding her hands neatly on her notebook. Most of us don't want to watch other people suffer. And this brings up, like, what kind of stake do you have in whether they're suffering or not? How does it matter to you? Why would it? Which is when eventually the idea of bets comes up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Festus gives us that idea. So you'd like it if we gave odds on the tributes, Snow jokes. That would make you tune in. It would certainly liven things up. And the class chuckles. But then they start really considering the idea.
Yep.
And one girl says that that's really gruesome. You can't be serious. Do you think we should be betting? And then Snow says, not really. But then he says, on the other hand, if it's a good idea, if it's a success, then yeah, absolutely, we should be doing this. And then he says, I want to go down in history as the one who brought gambling to the games. And says this was like some excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. And we're just getting started. We're just getting started. Yep. Because, you know, as we go through, I don't know if he had the idea at the park and we missed it, or if it's coming up. But the idea of like people bringing food.
That's what Lucy Gray asked for them. Oh, you mean like when he says people can buy you presents? Yeah, that's later on.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's jump over there. I guess we go to the point where everybody is finally actually meeting their tributes for the first time, and they are not, for the most part, having very good interactions.
It's so different than what we get in the first books. These kids are like shackled. They're chained to these blocks where the little tables are, where they're meeting their mentors for the first time. This is just, it's so barbaric. And I know that sounds like nothing because like the games in the first books were also barbaric, but this is just on a, it's like, this is going to sound like such a shitty thing to say, but it's the whole point of the books, right? Having all of that extra trapping around the games itself really does do something to obscure, you know, if you're not careful, the horror of it. And without all of that trapping, it's just, and they haven't even gotten to the fucking game yet. I don't even know if they make it to the arena in this book, but like just the talk of it without all of the extraneous shit is so much worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. It's really, this is for me much more than Snow himself. What grips me about this book is the ideas that Suzanne Collins is exploring here about the ways in which we eventually sanitize and make things seem civilized in a way that is utterly surface and yet is adequate, you know, and we prove that's adequate ourselves in life every day. The way we live and what we accept.
Yep.
And how much of a complete, like your reaction here is saying like, this is barbaric. And you know that is a bonkers thing to say compared to, they're still dying though in the future, but it feels different. And it's really like fascinating the way in which maniacs that like run the world know this sort of thing and are able to exploit our willingness to look away and ignore as long as we are given the like perfect circumstances in which to do that and it be easy, we will. And that's so distressing.
As long as we have something pretty to look at, we will always choose that.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is just, you know, it is, I don't want to call it a flaw. It's just human nature. It's like who we are as a species. Like, I don't think it's abnormal to want to look away from the horrific shit that's in the world, especially when we have so many shiny things to look at instead. That like we have to force ourselves to look at the ugliness that's in the world. And there's so much of it that it's no wonder that we look away at every opportunity that we get, you know? And you're right. The maniacs that are in charge, like, have our number,
Yeah.
you know, and it's been working for a long time and will probably continue to work, because I don't think that we are capable of the kind of change that we need to make, you know? Ugh, that's a bummer. Sorry, y'all.
Yikes.
But it's true, you know?
Yeah.
This whole thing too with like the interview, like nobody is talking to their mentors except Lucy and Snow. And it's like a really standard form that he's supposed to be asking her, because it turns out the previous 10 games, it hasn't occurred to anybody to like ask the tributes any fucking thing about themselves or their lives or what, like anything.
Yeah.
So this is new as well. And it ends up letting Lucy and Snow have a conversation about like their real circumstances. And we find out that both her parents are dead, and she finds out that both his parents are dead, and they have kind of a moment around that. And she tells him about the people she comes from and how she makes her money, which is like performing. And he's like, I didn't think people in the districts could afford something like that. And she explains that, well, they really can't, but sometimes people will pull their money, especially if it's like an event, like 3 or 4 people will get married at once and have like one big party. Yeah. And this is when he asks her, like, what did your people do during the war? And she tells him, you know, they didn't do anything. We're just us. And that was really like surprisingly sad to me. Like, I understand it in a conflict like that. Like, you know, you can't be a small band of people that don't take a side. That historically never works out for anybody. But something about her just being like, we were just us, like outside of all of the goings-ons of you people. And, you know.
You found it sad?
I did, for some reason. I really did. We're just us.
Interesting. I thought of it as like, isn't she lucky that they were able to just be separate from it, you know?
No, well, yeah, well, no, that, yes to that part of it. The sadness, I mean, being like, they weren't a part of it, and at the end of the day, they got swept up into the districts and are suffering the same fate.
Oh,
and that made me sad,
okay.
Because they were, you know, they weren't part of any of it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. It seemed like they were safe for.
Yeah, well, you know how that goes. And then they get distracted by what's going on with Sejanus, who has brought more food and cake for Marcus, who will not speak and will not touch any of the food. And Snow looks around the room and says, around the room, the other tributes were in various stages of engagement. Several had covered their faces and were refusing to communicate. A few were crying. Some were warily answering questions, but even they looked hostile. And so then Snow tries to talk. I
wanted to mention too, with Snow, like giving her the bread pudding, and it makes her cry.
Oh yeah, right. That's when they start talking about parents.
Feels sincere to me.
On her part?
Yeah. Like, did you believe this?
I did. Her reaction to it is it feels really sincere. She's so surprised, and it turns out to be something that's like really meaningful to her, which was there was no way for him to know that. Yeah, I thought that was real.
I did think it was funny though when she initially starts crying, he's immediately like, "Oh, I'll get you something else." Oh, this dude does not understand human emotion.
Mm-hmm. He has to ask her if she's married, and then he's like, that's a ridiculous question. And then he's like, wait a minute, but they do get married younger than districts. And there's a space where he thinks to himself, there should have been more questions like who cares about you, or even better, who can you count on? But like stuff like that's not included on the form. And that was an interesting moment because it seemed out of character for him, because we talked already about like his seeming lack of empathy, and to wonder who cares about you or who can you count on. I don't know. That felt kind of real as well, even though it's very fleeting. It just didn't seem like a question that he would ask that would somehow benefit him later. Unless I want to be really, really cynical and think he's already thinking about how to present her and like pulling heartstrings or something would be beneficial. But I don't think that's it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at this point. She says, I have a couple cousins and the rest of the covey. Is there space for them? There wasn't, but there should be, he thought, given how fractured families were by the war. There should be a place for anyone who cared for you at all. In fact, maybe that should be the question to start with. Who cares about you, or even better, who can you count on? And again, I just want to point out, when he thinks there should be, it doesn't, like the thought of who can you count on, there's no emotion with it though. He's thinking like we should ask this question, but it doesn't feel like he's going, oh, we all have people who care about us and that matters, because it clearly doesn't matter that much. He doesn't ask her about her cousins and the rest of the covey. He just moves on to the next question.
That's true.
So my instinct is to just be like, if we're gathering information, we need to make room for all the information. Even if it falls outside of the parameters of what we're used to, we should be prepared.
We should be asking everything. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, well, that's definitely much more in line with his character as we've seen so far. Yeah, I guess I can see your point there. If he's coming to this as, he's not a game maker, he doesn't have a lot of respect for them yet, but if he's coming into this as someone who's trying to make the games more efficient, better, more engaging, if that's where his mind is, then he would most certainly be analyzing the questionnaire and wondering if it's enough, if it's comprehensive enough, and that really wouldn't be out of character at all. So yeah. Okay, yeah, I like it.
I also can't help but think about how, like, effectively he uses the people they love against them later on in this, his life. And
God, yes, fuck.
It feeds right into that sort of like collection of information, so
really
that I know how to leverage that,
Fucking does, doesn't it? God damn it. I thought he was showing me something for a second. This motherfucker ain't showing me shit. Damn it. Well, that's what I get. All right, so after that, it's almost time to wrap up. And he wants to tell her about the interview that's going to be on television. And he says, I think you might sing again. And she is a little reluctant. She's just like, I don't think there's really a point. When I did it at the Reaping, it wasn't planned. It was just part of a sad tale that nobody but me gives a hoot about. And he's like, yeah, but it hit a nerve with a lot of people. And tells her how beautiful it was. And then he tells a story about how her singing reminded him of a song his mother used to sing to him. Yeah. And that's when he talks about losing both his parents. She calls him an orphan, which he bristles at because apparently that's something that he was teased with when he was younger. Talks about...
your parents are dead. Like, what?
Like, what?
The fuck is the matter with you? Jesus Christ.
Fucking kids are unhinged. Talks a little bit about his mother and his father, who he wasn't very close to. And then he says something about, or she says, it would have been nice to meet you under different circumstances. And is this when it happens? When he talks about like meeting her at a bar somewhere, or is that later? I may have jumped ahead.
I think that's now. I'm trying to see the spot, because there's the moment where he's asking her to sing again, and she is saying that it's like probably pointless. She also does say, but I do love to sing though. And I do love that she's just like, and I love showing off. When he asks her, can you answer some questions on this form? And she's like, sure, I love talking about myself. I just love that energy so much, you know, like it's just always kind of delightful how she is leaning into it and not feeling any shame about this at all. It's the kind of energy that I wish we could like start to move with a little bit more, in terms of like earlier you were saying how you have no problem with self-pity, you know, because like sometimes you gotta wallow and that's fine. And like it's such an unfortunate thing that the words self-pity sound like a criticism, because if you look at those words together, they don't necessarily imply a bad thing, but we always hear self-pity as a thing you shouldn't do. And I feel this way also about like, oh, that's attention seeking. Yeah. And we all want attention. What do you mean? Like the attention we want may be very different, the scale, the type, but we all need it as people. So you're seeking attention. Is that like just, why does that mean that you write off everything that person did, you know?
Moral crime now. It's a moral failing to seek attention.
Exactly.
Well,
especially when it's like in reference to like, oh, self-harm. They were just seeking attention. Oh, really? They want people to know that they're not feeling good? Wow. What a terrible person they are. Like,
the horror.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah, and it's also like very sort of like a very gendered insult. I mean, I know like being flippant on social media would be like, here's the attention you were looking for, and we'll say it to anybody. But usually when it's an accusation, it's like, oh, that's seeking attention seeking behavior. It's generally levied at a woman who is oftentimes just speaking or merely existing. But
oh yeah, what was she doing? She was talking. God, can you believe it?
Don't you hate that? You know, it's. I don't want to segue too much off topic, but yeah, I stumbled across one of those weird graphs, and it was like a poll of men, and like men as a rule, don't at me. I won't see it anyway, but don't at me. Do not like listening to women talk. Like they just don't want it.
Yep.
Don't want to hear women's voices. They don't want them. That's why they don't want them like doing their like sports ball announcing and commentating. Like they legit don't like to listen to us talk. And that is so wild to me because there's only us. Like there's you and I. Like,
yeah,
you're
entirely discounting the voices of over 50% of the population, and you're just like not interested. That is psychotic behavior, but sure,
it really is. Oh God, I'm sorry. It's not funny, but it just like when it was just a moment of like just like shock for me. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's really that bad? Y'all, it's that bad. That number was high as fuck.
Yeah, what was some study that was done where like they tracked men's reactions to women speaking in the workplace and men perceived women as dominating the conversation when they spoke over 28% of the time? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was like, not only do you have to speak less than men, you have to speak so much less than men. Or they still see you as being fucking aggro and needing to push yourself into conversations. Like, it's a mental illness. It's a fucking baked in problem in your brain. Something's wrong with y'all, but it's not my job to fix that, I guess. Oh my God, this part with Clemencia. Clemencia has this like this tribute who slaughters hogs, and it's just like, ew. Oh my God. What do I do with this? Can I just like say she does a different thing? You know what? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just make shit up. I'm just say whatever. I visited District 10, you know. It's practically my second home. Before the war, her family had developed luxury hotels and vacation destinations, and Arachne had traveled extensively in Panem. She still bragged about it, even though she'd been as capital-bound as anyone else since the war. I just really love that we've got like a sort of eat, pray, love bitch on our hands here. It's just like, I've been to this place once. It's a second home to me. I will just invent a whole thing because I feel entitled to do that since I was there at one time in my life.
At one time. I visited there. I know everything about it.
You know, like, yeah, that's some shit, man.
But you know, it's like a precursor for like coming up with the like narratives for your tributes and like coming up with like an angle and a story to tell. Definitely.
It's so funny. So this is when Dr. Gall, hippity hoppity. How did you fare? Did they greet you like friends or just sit there and stare? The students shot confused glances at one another as she retrieved the questionnaires. Yeah, I bet you were confused. We're confused. This is so weird, the hippity hoppity thing. What is that? Ugh. It's I know I already likened a character in Sookie to Patchface today, but it's giving Patchface.
That's entirely too much Patchface content.
There's too much Patchface. I don't like him. So they begin to talk about why try and like get them to perform when it's not going to make a difference. And Sejanus, when he's asked like, why did you bring sandwiches? He says, they were starving. We're going to kill them. Do we have to torture them ahead of time as well? Huh. A rebel sympathizer, said Dr. Gall. Hardly rebels. Some of them were 2 years old when the war ended. The oldest were 8. And now that the war is over, they're just citizens of Panem, aren't they? Same as us. Isn't that what the anthem says the capital does? You give us light, you reunite. It's supposed to be everyone's government, right? That's the general idea. Go on. Well, then it should protect everyone. That's its number one job. And I don't see how making them fight to the death achieves that. Obviously, you don't approve of the Hunger Games. That must be hard for a mentor. That must interfere with your assignment. And then he's like, well, maybe you should replace me. And she says, not on your life, boy, Dr. Gall chuckled. Compassion is the key to the games. Empathy, the thing we lack. Right, Casca? She glanced at Dean Highbottom, but he only fiddled with a pen.
That's very loaded. That's a conversation that they have had. And it lends to your theory from earlier about him feeling a way about the monster that he created. I like that the whole gasp is like, when Sejanus says that.
Yeah. Just the very idea. I mean, this was apparently something that Snow considered blackmailing with the fact that he would like to not be doing this. So I guess it is a big deal, but it's
and
weird
he's like,
to see this reaction.
He's been called a rebel sympathizer, which I assume is pretty serious accusation if it was made in like earnest, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't take it very seriously.
You know,
he doesn't seem to be worried about it.
Not at all. He doesn't seem to like that's supposed to. Excuse me, 1 second. I have to.
Is there a cat?
No, I keep. Not that anybody is interested, but I keep unplugging the lamp that's on my desk. Like I have like a surge bar, and I keep hitting the little button with my foot and turning it on and off. And so I turned my lamp off on my desk.
I can't hear you at all now.
I turned my lamp off on my desk, and it's really annoying. And now I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's back. We're back, folks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but yeah. So when she calls him that, like I expected, like the whole class to be kind of like, "Oh shit, here we go." But she's not saying it in a way that's like, "I'm fitting to call the cops." You know, I'm gonna report you. You know, she's not doing that. And then she's like, he stops arguing once he realizes that she's on a completely different track. You know, she's not going to dismiss him. She's not going to let him out of this. So he's done. But Snow is like, it says Coriolanus felt he ceded the battle, but could not believe he'd given up the war. He's tougher than he looked. Sejanus planned. Imagine throwing a mentorship back in Dr. Gall's face. So Snow is like, oh, you have that in you. Interesting. Let me make a note of that.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's almost complimentary, but because he sees this guy as such a threat, it's just immediately like, oh, you thought you were going to fool me? Like,
and it definitely feels like it's Snow is readjusting his assessment of Sejanus. Like he's readjusting all the time with everybody that he interacts with, right? Always like taking in new information, trying to figure out like how it works, how the other person works, and how he can ultimately use it. And it feels very much like in this moment, he's just doing that again. Like he's just clocking some more information and he's filing it away for use at a later time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Dr. Gall is just like on one now. Now she's like, oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone in the audience felt as passionately about the tributes as this young man here? That should be our goal. No, said Dean Highbottom. Yes, for them to really get involved. What is the no from him? Like, I would have loved to see some history between the two of them, like go further back.
Right? Like it goes nowhere too. He says no and she just says yes and keeps right on moving. He does not get to say anything more about why he says no. But I'm going to keep my eye on Dean Highbottom, y'all. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I got my eye on him. There's layers there, and depending on which direction this book goes, I wouldn't be. I know he does not like Snow, but I wouldn't be surprised if this book does. It could do like a number of things, but if it goes down a route where Snow ends up falling for Lucy in some capacity, then there's going to be a point where he needs her to either survive the games or get out of the games or avoid the games or something, right? In order to like try to save her life. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I'm going to keep my eye on the dean because I feel like if Snow suddenly does a 180, which is clearly temporary because I know how he ends up. And I don't know how he recovers. If he does anything like get in cahoots with Lucy to try to subvert the games in some fashion, I don't know exactly how he recovers and becomes president. I just can't fill in those blanks. But say something like that happens in this book, I'm going to keep my eye on the dean because I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up helping in some fashion because he just seems to have so much disdain for this whole thing, and he's clearly a drug addict, and I don't think he takes his career very seriously, and he might just be at a point in his life where he's ready to just risk it all, if that makes any sense. So like I said, I'm gonna keep my eye on that.
All right. So eventually she says, you know what? Like, what if we let the audience send tributes food? You guys come up with a proposal and, put it on my desk tomorrow morning. What young brains lack in experience, they sometimes make up for in idealism. Nothing seems impossible to them. Old Casca over there came up with the concept for the Hunger Games when he was my student at the university, just a few years older than you are now. All eyes turned to Dean Highbottom, who addressed Dr. Gall. It was just theoretical. And so is this, unless it proves useful, said Dr. Gall.
That sounds like a man who did not intend for this to become a real thing.
Yeah.
But he has also advanced to a rather prestigious position. So I'm assuming that coming up with the Hunger Games, whether he meant for it to be what it became, was some type of boon to him. He rode some sort of wave to success. Maybe he regrets it now, but at the time, especially if we talk about what you said at the beginning, which is if he sees a little bit of himself in a young Snow, if he was that type of social climber,
right,
then I can see that, a young man who ends up becoming the origin or the originator of the Hunger Games, that's going to be a certain amount of notoriety. And, he just found himself in a very good position in life, and it probably seemed great at the time. And then as he just got older and saw what it became, maybe it just becomes harder and harder to live with.
That's interesting. Yeah. So Coriolanus sighed inwardly. Another group project. Another opportunity to compromise his ideas in the name of collaboration.
Good
Either
God.
Have them cut entirely, or worse, watered down until they had lost their bite. The class voted on a committee of 3 mentors to draw the thing up. Of course, he was elected, and he could hardly decline. Oh my God, this guy. There's a moment in Community where they are going to take part in this sort of like performance thing, and somebody says something about like, Jeff, I'm sure you're going to ask to be the main, and he says, I don't reach for leadership. I have leadership thrust upon me unwillingly. And everybody around the room just like groans and throws chips of paper at him and stuff. And that is very much what it feels like with Coriolanus here. Just like, I didn't want to be the leader, but of course they asked me to be. Which, look, on the one hand, I do kind of get it as the person who often winds up in charge when I would really rather not. But also, you really kind of would rather.
Yeah.
You would a little bit. So there it is. So this is when he goes back to see the tributes again, and he's bringing some food here with some beans that have herbs and are made to look fancier than they are.
Fancy beans.
Fancy beans.
He gets to the zoo and it's mad crowded, but the crowd parts for him. They recognize him and they're just like, "Oh, get out of the way, get out of the way. That's Mentor Snow coming. Make room, make room." And he gets to his corner, and the twins are on his rock. I love this. Just the fact that it's written that way. Not, the corner, not making his way to the rock. It's his. And these twins move without him even having to say anything. They see him coming and they just like pull the fuck up. And they're like, yeah, you can have it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. We're done here. We already fed our tribute. And that's what everybody is doing. Everybody is here feeding tributes. And Lucy is not like at the bars, like getting food. She's kind of like in the back. And when she sees him, she goes over to where he is and he presents his fancy beans. I'm sorry.
That sounded like a real euphemism.
It really, really did. I didn't intend for it to sound like that.
Oh my God. And now, present fancy beans.
Oh, that's an awful image. It's got Donald Sutherland ball sack just floating in my brain.
Oh, no.
It's terrible. I want it to go away. It won't go away. Anyway.
This is the combo. You were right about Sejanus and Marcus. They used to be classmates in District 2. Well, that's complicated. At least we don't have to deal with that. Yes, this is complicated enough. He meant it as a joke, but it fell flat. It was complicated enough, and it got more so by the minute. She gave him a wistful smile. Sure would have been nice to meet you under different circumstances. Like how? It was a dangerous line of questioning, but he couldn't help himself. Oh, like you came to one of my shows and heard me sing, she said. And afterward you came up to chat and maybe we had a drink and a dance or two. He could imagine it. Her singing somewhere like Pluribus's nightclub, him catching her eye, connecting before they'd even met. And I'd come back the next night. Like we had all the time in the world, she said. She's playing him, right?
I mean, she's doing something. She's doing something.
I don't
even know. And then all this gets interrupted by a little bit of a show. And the twins have got the crowd clapping and the tributes from District 6 are dancing. And we have some other tributes kind of like getting into the idea of performing. And Snow is watching the whole thing and he's like, this is a good idea. Because I need this to be prime time for the interviews. And it's going to take more than just Lucy. We need to get like other people invested.
Yeah.
And he starts thinking about like having popularity in the arena means that there's a chance that people could send gifts. And then he's like, oh, shit. I'm going to need fancy viewers who can afford to buy her shit because I can't buy nothing. And you know what would be a good idea? I should make it a rule in the proposal that mentors cannot send their own tributes gifts because otherwise he's out of the fucking running. He doesn't have any money to do anything like that. And he's like, this is when he's like, and look at what, what's her name? Arachne?
I think it's Arachne.
Arachne? That's weird. Has laid out a little picnic for her tribute. And this is when he's like, a loaf of bread and a block of cheese. And were those grapes? It's just so funny to me. I don't know why. But she's doing this thing where she is trying to, and this is the same girl who doesn't like her girl from district because she's butchers pigs, and she's going to write up a whole like backstory for this girl. So she's doing a little show, and instead of it being the tribute who is performing, she's basically performing, and she's got this wonderful sandwich ready for her tribute, but she won't give it to her. And from Snow's POV, he says that she seems to be lecturing the girl. It was quite a speech. And at one point, the girl tries to reach through the bars to grab the sandwich, and Arachne just draws it back from her, laughing. And she turns to, like, look at the audience and laugh again. And, you know, holds out the sandwich and then snatches it back another time. And Lucy is like, She is playing with fire. This is no good. And Arachne waves to the crowd again, and then she takes a bite out of the fucking sandwich. And it says that Snow could see the tribute's face darkening, the muscles tightening, and he could see something else too. And it has been mentioned when she's laying out the picnic that she's got this pearl-handled knife that she's slicing the cheese with. And this tribute snatches that knife, and Snow tries to like get up and yell, but it's too late because this girl has yanked Arachne forward and slit her fucking throat with her own cheese knife. And I mean, she had it coming. Is all I'm going to say about that.
Yep. Agreed.
She had that shit coming. But it's a bummer because, you know, this is going to fuck up everything for all the rest of the tribute.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, nobody's going to be bringing
the main
food to the zoo anymore. And I don't even know if, like, trying to get people engaged in rooting for them, and they've all just witnessed this, I'm assuming, murder. I don't know if Arachne dies, but she slits her throat, and that usually does not end well. Yeah. This is going to make everybody turn on them immediately. I'm wondering if it even threatens the whole mentor program. You know, like maybe it will be. You know, maybe they'll be deemed just too dangerous to be interacting with students. I don't know. I feel like the mentor program is a big deal and a big part of the book, so I don't imagine it will be discontinued. But, I mean, I feel like it's kind of on the table, at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just so startled at this turn of events because...
Same.
I just like I was disgusted by her behavior for sure, but I didn't think that there was enough like wiggle room for this person to grab her the way that she did. Like the whole thing. I'll be interested to see exactly how this is staged in the movie. 'Cause I'm sort of imagining this person like grabbing her by the hair, which is not what is said. It just says yanked Arachne forward. But I'm imagining like, you know, she has her back to him and it's a female tribute, right? Yeah. Her finger sliding down the bar, darting out, circling the handle of the knife. So yeah, I really was like, oh my God. Like that is just the brutality of that in the moment is so sudden, and yet it is satisfying. It is a little bit.
It's super satisfying. I mean, I already didn't like this girl. I mean, I just met her, but I already didn't like her. And then the taunting and it's funny too. Her playing up to the crowd is the opposite of the objective. Like you're supposed to be getting the audience to fall in love with your tribute, or at least become invested in your tribute in some way, and you do that by like letting them engage with the spectators, with the onlookers.
Right.
And this girl has already decided that she's going to write the story of her tribute, since her tribute didn't give her enough information that was usable. And then she's taking this television appearance. I think the cameras are there this time. I'm assuming they are there this time. Taking this opportunity to once again make it kind of about herself. Mm-hmm, so she's just misreading this whole endeavor, in my opinion. As far as the way she's gripped up, I pictured it being very like you said, like she's turning around facing the audience, and you just like, because we know that the girl's like reaching out, trying to grab the sandwich, and she gets close a couple times, but it gets snatched away. So definitely close enough to like grab a fistful of hair and yank that head back. And then with the other hand, go right around to the front of the neck, and boom, easy peasy.
Yeah. Hippity hoppity. Man, but yeah, so that is the end of the chapter. This is, I'm glad we decided to cover this, because this book is crazy. I'm really looking forward to some stuff coming up and what you're going to think about it. It'll be a good convo.
Cool.
Yeah. So right before we hang up, I want to say hi to our new patrons.
Well, hey.
Joined our ranks on Patreon. I'm tapping the anthem here. There it is. Yeah. Oh, these sound effects. But thank you very much to Isabel D and to Tegan for becoming patrons. Appreciate
Welcome.
you so much. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, go to patreon.com/unspoiled. And you can sign up at a bunch of different tiers. You can even just type in $1. I don't offer $1 tier currently, but I'm actually thinking about bringing it back with just like some real bare bones sort of benefits to it. So I'll keep you all apprised of this idea that I have, but I also wanted to thank everybody who donated to the fundraiser that I was doing for the Trevor Project for the month of May. I had a goal of raising $500, and I wound up raising $566. Yay! So thank you all for donating and supporting us, and I'm just glad to have reached my goal. They start you off default at a goal of $200. And I was like, no. Let me bump that. Oh, I just looked and I have raised $599.
Oh, that's great.
So it went up even again. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Trevor Project, for those who don't know, is a organization dedicated to like the mental health of queer youth, and to give them a place that they can talk about what they're going through safely. And they offer this really cool messaging system that automatically like deletes history and everything, so that parents who are like hyper vigilant about monitoring everything their kid is involved with are not going to be able to trace it and punish their child for participating in it. It's just so crazy to me that there are parents out there like that, but they are very real. So they do a lot, and I really feel strongly about like queer youth, and we are heading in the right direction compared to where we had been. But the standards are bars on the floor, you know. And our kids deserve a lot better, and the world deserves those kids. And if we don't do better for them, the world doesn't get to have them either. And that potential and beauty is lost forever of that life. So protect queer kids, everybody. Let's do this. I think that's about everything. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap it?
No, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. We love you very much. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Are you coming to the tree where dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.